I'm Ross, and I'm a curious parent.
I'm John, and I'm an education expert.
This is From the Sidelines.
Bite-sized study tips to help you help them through.
Hello, and welcome to From the Sidelines, which is our podcast and film series helping you to help them through. With myself, Ross, and John, who is our education guru. John, for those that have just joined us at this point, do you want to give a little kind of overview of what this aims to achieve?
Yeah, what we're looking to achieve really is to give you, the parents, the carers, the grandparents, anyone who's a champion of our young people, all of the kind of information that in a bite-sized kind of format on how you can help them through school. So whether that's with study skills, organizational skills, anything in the home where you can help them to be really successful at school, whether that's primary school, secondary school, college, even into university as well. And from my background from kind of education, I've been a teacher, school leader, hopefully I can bring some of those, what I sometimes class as, so I feel some of the secrets that teachers have that,
Yeah.
you know, some people, we know a teacher and they were able to help him. Well, actually, let's just extract all that information from teachers and give it to you in a really bite-sized chunk, whether it's these podcasts you might be listening to, you might listen to one before, or some of the really short, succinct 1-minute videos that we do as well. So hopefully it really helps people.
Brilliant. And, you know, I think within all of this, what we want to make sure is that the way that we present the info to you guys is it's something you can take away and do pretty much straight away and help.
That's it, and I think that you can hopefully put these things into place very quickly. They're all hopefully filled with very short and sweet golden nuggets. But equally as well, we've said before on other podcasts, sharing them with other people as well, sharing with your friends, sharing with other kind of people who are parents, etc., because all these things, irrespective of subject or year group or age or school, they're all the same. This is about how children learn best.
And finally, there's a range of these that we produce. There's lots of different tips and tricks when delivered individually. So implementing one of these will make a difference. When implementing a few of them will make a massive difference to the potential success for a young person.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, something that we've talked about actually off air before we started is about if parents think that, well, but my son's in college now, it's too late, they haven't done this before. We were talking about this, it's never too late to start. Actually we can start this, great if you can start as early as you can, either when they're smaller and they're younger, but equally as early as you can in the academic year. What we don't want to get to is the night before an exam, suddenly trying to change the whole of our body, how we work, cramming stuff in, not sleeping. Like it doesn't do anybody any favors. So start early. But if this is the first time you've watched this, and even if it's getting towards exam time, there isn't a too late to start. Do all these little things can make the big differences.
So you say about starting them young. I am in a position where I have 2 children under 3. At which point, the topics that we're discussing in this podcast, I wish I could have more of at the moment, but that's just life. Rest and sleep.
Yes, rest and sleep.
So, something that I think the majority of us love.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we discussing this, John? How does this play into study skills?
Well, it's rest and sleep. As if you think about it, just forget in school now or study. Just think about it as humans.
Yeah.
You need, as an adult, adequate rest and sleep to be able to come in and work effectively.
Yeah.
Okay. And we all know that when, especially if parents are listening, thinking back to when you first had your first child, everything's a struggle when you don't get sleep. Everything, the most basic of kind of tasks are really difficult. And when you do get a good night's sleep, suddenly the world's a better place. And I think if we think about that from a study point of view as well, we need to make sure that our young children and our older children get the adequate rest and sleep so they are ready to go and they're ready to study because their brain needs that that switch off time.
So in terms of the learning process, how does rest and sleep play a part in that?
Okay, well, to start with, if we haven't, let's take it the other way. If we haven't had rest and sleep, and that's generally where it's easier to understand, is that we normally lack kind of concentration or focus. And again, thinking about it, if you or I have been kind of tired, we easily kind of start daydreaming and drifting off, and it's hard to really hold that concentration. Now, if we want our children to be concentrating at home, in a classroom, in an exam, and some of these exams are now on for 2 hours long, we need to make sure that they're fully rested. Okay, so that lack of concentration, mind drifting, etc., etc. But secondly, in terms of more from the learning point of view, they become really inefficient. And what happens is when you are quite tired and quite fatigued, you only really take on board probably about half as much information as you would have done as if you were well rested. So, if we thinking about selling this to the students and because let's face it, all these parents listening now are probably saying, well, yeah, John, that's easy. You're saying that. But when I tell my 15-year-old he needs to go to bed early, he's going to say he doesn't want to, or she doesn't actually want to. But actually, if you sell this to them in a different way and say, but by you staying up late, you will have to study for twice as long to retain the same information. Whereas actually, if you're well rested, you can be more efficient and you can do it. You can be high performing in less time. Then actually, we're starting to tell that message, and we're starting to kind of get to the mind of the teenager who goes, oh, "Okay,
fair enough. Yeah,
I'm in now. Yeah. I like this. I'm in." Yeah. Okay, so I think that's really important to remember, that our brain doesn't work as well, and we're not able to process that information and retain that information anywhere near as much as if we were well rested.
And when we're looking at applying it to study skills or let's say trying to solve complex problems, I'm presuming being tired and fatigued isn't great in doing so.
No, it's not. And the reason, if we unpack that a little bit, the reason why that is because when we're fatigued, our brain isn't able to recall and retrieve previously learnt information as well as it would do normally. Now, what that means is that whenever we if we think about, we've got some information stored in our brain that we have to call on to make a good decision, even like driving home in the car, right? You have some information in your brain about which way was best last time, or the traffic, or the weather on the road, or all those different things that change that experience. If we're not able to call on that information, that previously learned information, as easily and as quickly, we then can't assess the situation in front of us as well. We can't choose the right strategy, and we can't then kind of solve that problem as well, because we're struggling to use the information that we need, that kind of foundational knowledge of how to solve that information. So what then happens is the issue in front of us, whether it's driving home in the car, whether it's a maths equation, whether it's an essay in English, becomes a lot more difficult, because we can't then access the information we need to solve that, assess the situation, find out what the question's asking us, what the issue is, and then solve it. So I think that's really important for people to understand, that if the brain isn't working in the right way, all of these problems become a bit harder, because we can't solve them in the right way, because all those things aren't kind of talking to each other.
And we're not just talking about learning and studying, are we? Really, if we think about this as a general human being, if you're not rested, you're going to struggle physically and mentally to perform.
Absolutely, and I think lots of people watching will be very familiar with sporting events. So let's take a popular kind of example of a football match. Okay, professional football. Think about how many times we see goals scored very, very late on in games. Right, that's not a coincidence. How goals go in between 88 and 93, 94 plus minutes. It's not a coincidence that happens. It happens because, unfortunately, players become fatigued, physically and mentally. So what that means is that physically they aren't able to select or use the right techniques as well. So they're not able to get in the right positions and do those things. But equally, more importantly, going back to our study bits here, mentally they're not able to choose and select the right decisions. So they make the wrong decisions. They choose the wrong kind of outcome to do. So that instead of whacking the ball clear, it ends up in the back of the net, or those type of things, because their mind isn't thinking as well as it should have been, because they're right at the end of a game where they're mentally and physically fatigued, which then ultimately leads to mistakes, physical mistakes, as well as mental mistakes and mental errors, people switching off, not marking somebody, all those things happen. And if we think about that and transfer it to the study, that's like saying someone is studying for an hour and a half, all those things start to happen. So let's just do it in 25-minute blocks. I bet if someone did an analysis in a football game, I bet there wouldn't be anywhere near as many goals that go in between 42 minutes and 45 minutes as they do from kind of 88, 89 minutes. That because they've been playing even longer in that second half and had the first half as well, they're even more tired, especially with the physical game that football is.
So the reason why we're doing this podcast is because, I'm a parent of young children, but yourself, parent of teenage children.
Yeah.
One who's going to university this weekend.
Correct.
And what we want to say to those that are listening is that it isn't just about giving information in a context. It's about also providing the advice, because there's going to be a lot of people listening and go, fair point, John. Yeah, you make sense what you're saying, but I've got a teenager who doesn't want to go to bed.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do I do it?
Yeah, I think it always comes back to what we call selling the why to your children. And what that means is, rather than just saying you need to go to bed early, start before you say that, having a talk about, it's interesting, isn't it, how, a lot of goals are scored in the football and people are getting fatigued, and actually, you need to be well rested just as Cristiano Ronaldo or Mo Salah needs to be rested. Actually, use some of those examples in real life to talk about how they need to be rested in order to perform. And as a student, they also need to perform in the classroom, in the exam hall, etc., so that they need to look after their body and start thinking about that a bit more like an athlete would. I think that's a nice analogy to use for people, or even if they're involved in they're like kind of pop singers and artists and that kind of stuff. Well, actually, we know that sometimes people have to cancel gigs because they have to rest their voice. Yeah. They can't just keep going and going and going, and they also can't just be out every night and staying up all night and then expecting to wow crowds the next day and be at the top of their kind of performance. They have to look after themselves. So we need to kind of use that and talk about what that might mean is some sensible bedtimes. I'm not talking about really, really early, but what we're saying is not like 1-2 o'clock in the morning. Making it sensible, age appropriate, sticking to some of those times. So there's a routine as well. Routine's really important. So it's not 9 o'clock one night, 1 o'clock the next night, etc., etc. We've got a rough kind of schedule, so our body gets used to those things because our body likes to be in a routine. Think about when you go on holiday and if you go to somewhere in a different time zone, it takes you time to adjust. We don't want our body to be having to be constantly adjusting every day. Keep to those regular kind of routines. Sell the why. Use sports and the arts and performers as kind of as analogies, and hopefully speak to them as young people who might be able to understand this.
It's strange, isn't it? Because the older you get, the more you don't understand why people wouldn't want to sleep and rest in this situation.
It is, and I think it's having that empathy and understanding that actually, that they want to be up all night and everything else, but equally giving them the kind of the understanding, isn't it, of kind of, well, listen, this is how it works. We know it works. We see it on the TV, and the same's happening with you. And we also get kind of angry and annoyed, don't we, very quickly when we're, again, going back to that example of when you first had a baby. Everything's a struggle when you're tired, like everything, and everything's so much easier when you're not. And surely our young people would be able to understand that and see that, in terms of how they can navigate their way through a day a lot easier if they're a lot sharper.
Thanks, John.
You off for a sleep now?
I feel I could have a doze right now, actually, to be honest, just to take advantage of it in these big comfy seats. Look, another great piece of advice there, I think, for those at home listening. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, good. Hope it's been helpful. And like we said at the start, if you've got other kind of friends, family, people who would really kind of benefit from this, share it, kind of plug it with them, because we're just wanting to make sure that everyone can understand this in a really short and succinct way, and we can help you to help them through.
So from the sidelines, we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye.